Yesterday wasn't so fun for people hanging out over in crypto land. XRP dropped as low as $2.39. Bitcoin got down to about $106,000. So you might be wondering, since the price is up a little bit today, is the pain over? Can we breathe easy right now? Well, not so fast. Even though XRP is $2.52 and you got Bitcoin just a hair shy of $110,000, multiple analysts that I follow are warning that it is absolutely possible, if not probable, that the price will go lower for XRP. And that includes one analyst who I believe is among the very best in the entire crypto space, warning that it's possible XRP could drop close to as much as $1. Now, the good news is, I'm not saying this to scare anybody. The good news is that even if that comes to pass, none of them, literally none of these analysts, believe that if that happens, it means that we're entering a bear market and that everything's over and you need to take your ball and go home. None of them believe that. They all believe that even if that happens, we're still in number go up mode ultimately. Meaning on the higher time frame, big picture, yeah, you're still going to see Bitcoin go on that final parabola to hit a new all-time high. Profits will be taken and rotate into altcoins. You'll see a proper alt season, and XRP will be one of the greatest beneficiaries, if not the best beneficiary out of the top 100 coins by market cap, finally melting faces for the first time in almost a decade. Here we have a post from Ryan Dietrich. He is a chief market strategist at Carson Group, and I've only been following him over the last couple months or so. I'm a more recent follower, but I've quickly become a fan because he's just consistently putting out some straight up bangers on X, as the youths would say. Just historical data. And knowing that history does tend to rhyme with itself, I look at this and I'm like, that's interesting, and actually happens to look good. And we're talking about the stock market here, which is almost exclusively what I've seen him talk about. And that's fine though, because the crypto asset class follows the stock market. And so he wrote here, the best months historically for the stock market are almost here. And he's highlighting 6-month periods, all of the 6-month periods that exist. And he notes that the 6-month period of November through April, going back to 1950, on average, the change in value for the S&P 500 over that period, November through April, it's up 7.1%. That's the greatest 6-month period. We're entering the greatest 6-month period on average, dating back to 1950. And in what percentage of the time is it higher? Because it's not guaranteed. Like it's obviously the case that you could have the market lower over that 6-month period. What's the percentage odds going back to 1950 that it's higher? Well, the percentage of the time that it was higher, 77%. So close to 4 out of 5 times, number was higher. Now, if that indeed happens, crypto is going to follow, right? Almost certainly. That also plays into the lengthening cycle theory from Raoul Pal and Julian Biddle and TechDev. And they've been arguing quite a bit that, it has to do with the business cycle, global liquidity. I don't want to go into it too much in this video, but that's happening. I mean, other than, actually, I do have a post from TechDev. He's talking about the business cycle specifically. I just don't want to go through like a thorough, in-depth explanation every single time I make a video and have to mention this. But here's a post from TechDev, and he says, the longest runway continues. Takeoff has yet to begin, but it's close. And you can see up top, he's got Bitcoin. That's a Bitcoin chart going back to 2013. And on the bottom, you can see here's the business cycle, a separate metric going back to 2013, the same time period. All right, and so on the chart, each green dot marks the end of a macro bottoming phase when global liquidity starts turning back up. Now, historically, that's when Bitcoin begins its biggest moves. And that was certainly the case, in 2016 and 2020. And so what's of note here, if you look where I'm moving my mouse right here, is what's of note here is we just printed another green dot. The long accumulation phase is almost over. That's the point that he's making. And the explosive part of the cycle hasn't even begun yet. Because the explosive part, that happens in like the last roughly 10% of the market cycle. That's where you get the alt season, the biggest moves. We haven't had that yet. The most fun part is yet ahead if history is to rhyme with itself. And so the setup here, it looks extremely similar to moments before previous major bull runs. Very, very similar. And so according to this signal, yeah, the real move absolutely is still ahead. And It just makes sense. And I've talked about this, but I don't want to go too further in this video. There are reasons as to why the business cycle is lagging, and it has to do with debt refinancing. That's why we're switching from, according to Raoul Paul and TechDev and Julian Biddle, we're right now switching from a 4-year cycle into a 5-year cycle, because what triggers that cyclical nature, that 4 years, it was always debt refinancing, and that shifted to 5 years on average. Here's a post from on-chain analytics firm Swissblock. All right. When short-term holders capitulate, local bottoms are built. Yesterday saw more Bitcoin in loss sent to exchanges than during the deleverage event. A clear stress flare, but not yet full capitulation. From here, either Bitcoin reclaims $113,400 or short-term holders break completely, like in March or late July. There's no middle ground. And so on-chain analytics firm Swissblock is warning it is possible you could see lower here. And I am seeing that message echoed from tons of analysts that I follow. And it seems like as far as the level of conviction from the analysts who are saying stuff like that, it's like flip a coin. It really is. I mean, I'll show you some examples here, but it really is basically like flip a coin. Is it going to happen? And that's okay. Sometimes that's the right answer. Sometimes data isn't sufficient in the charts to have strong conviction one way or another. Sometimes the answer is, here's what might happen. I don't know. And that's fine. At other times, you'll see that these analysts have much stronger conviction. Perfectly reasonable. Here's a post from on-chain analytics firm Glassnode, another fantastic organization. And they wrote the following. It's about XRP. Since early August, XRP has dropped from $3.30 to $2.40. So that's down 27%. At the same time, long-term holders who accumulated before November 2024 ramped up their spending by about 580%, from $30 million a day to $260 million a day. So that's a clear sign of seasoned traders exiting and adding pressure to price action. Okay, well, you can characterize them as seasoned traders. It's just people who have been holding on to XRP for more than 5 seconds. It doesn't even mean that they're literally traders, by the way. But look, this chart on your screen here, this chart shows long-term XRP holders, some who bought before the major run-up, and they're just finally taking profits. Some of them are. So they're selling surge. What they're saying here is more than 5x at the same time price peaked around $3.30. So, when holders who have been sitting on XRP for years decide to sell into strength, it usually signals a top in that move. So, that supply hitting the market, yeah, it's true. Like, it puts a temporary pause on price, which is exactly what we saw, as XRP retraced to the mid $2 range. But is it healthy long-term? Absolutely. But short-term, this is distributing, also known as selling. Okay. It's people have been holding XRP for a little bit. Those players locking in gains and handing coins over to newer entrants before the next leg, which I certainly believe is going to be coming. But look, this is normal in bull run. So, no asset goes up in a straight line. And that's why I'd like to reiterate that this does not mean that the bull market is over. And in fact, despite the fact that this happened, and yes, this is just data. This is not something to be debated. Data is data. You can draw conclusions about what it means, but this is the data. I got to share with you, despite this, and I made a video, I guess, a couple days ago highlighting this, despite this being the case and these people taking that profit, there are a ton, in fact, record numbers of people, businesses, institutions removing XRP from exchanges. So that's happening at the same time, but very recently. And when that happens, look, why would people remove XRP from an exchange? Well, it means that they have no intention of selling it anytime soon, or else why would they go through the hassle of removing it from the exchange only to put it immediately back on the exchange to sell? Like, you wouldn't do that. And so it's an indicator that, hey, there's a lot of people that don't want to sell. So think about this. You've already had some degree of capitulation. You got a lot of people that actually do have conviction taking that off kind of nearly in record numbers. So we could go lower in the short term, but it's not a guarantee. And that would more so be driven by the overall market and macro conditions rather than something XRP specific. That's what I keep seeing from analysts. In fact, here is a post from one of the best in the biz so far as I'm concerned. This is chart analyst Credible Crypto. He shared this with his 480,000 followers on X. And in his XRP price chart, he says, like CRV, I don't expect XRP to move all the way back to $1.17, where we wicked on October 10th. So that'll be the liquidation event, of course. But if Bitcoin sees a deeper pullback below $100,000, then we would expect further downside across the board. And in XRP's case, that could allow for a move back down to our range lows at $1.70 or just below them into the demand zone that we previously wicked off of back in April at $1.60. And so, folks, he is warning it's possible. He's not straight up predicting it, but he's acknowledging it's possible the price of XRP could decrease by almost a freaking dollar. But check out what else he writes. At the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that we are still moving up and down between a higher time frame range, digesting the 500% move up from 50 cents that we had earlier. Of course, that started after the election in November. He says, in other words, these zones are really only relevant for those looking to buy the dip. If you're spot and chill, that would be me, and load it up, you just need to tune out the noise until the dip is over, in my opinion. So again, if it happens, he's not going to be sweating bullets. He understands, because he's been here for a long time, better part of a decade in crypto. He understands that when these moments happen, it is not the end of the world. And he firmly believes we're still in a bull market. Bull markets do have pullbacks, even big ones. And he just doesn't think that we've peaked. And he keeps articulating why. I've shared a number of his perspectives over the years. And I'm inclined to believe that what is most probable, though I admit I can't know for sure, is that we're way more likely to move higher and hit a much higher peak before the market finally crumbles and enters a bear market, which it will inevitably. I just don't pretend to know when or how high it goes. And there you go. And sometimes the improbable happens. I'm just saying, if history rhymes with itself, it makes sense to believe that we're going to go higher. But this time is different. Fine. That's almost never the case. But sometimes the improbable happens. I'm just not counting on it. Here's a post from chart analyst Ali Martinez. Says XRP could find support at $2. So here's another analyst warning. This could go lower. This is just from this morning at 11:26 a.m. Just a few hours ago. Here's a post from chart analyst Tara, XRP USD on the screen here. She says, here's what this wave 2 correction is looking like on XRP. A small retrace is expected to the 0.5 level at $2.44. And this, by the way, this is from this morning at 6:30 a.m. So a small retrace is expected to the 0.5 level at $2.44. And then wave C is targeting exactly the 618 retrace, now at $2.57. Again, I believe a big drop is coming after that level is reached. So just be careful on this retrace up. And so the price at the time was $2.49. And you can see here's a 24-hour chart. What did we hit? According to Live Coin Watch, we hit, a 24-hour high of $2.55, fairly close to what she's talking about. And we've fallen slightly. I mean, we're $2.54. It's practically where, that high was. But from her perspective, it's actually pretty damn probable that, you're going to see some sort of fall. We'll see if she ends up being correct. But it's another analyst acknowledging, hey, we could go lower here first. And so it just seems to me like, more XRP chart analysts have, they've joined the choir. I mean, do you remember several days or so ago, I made a video, and I dedicated almost the entire thing to the perspective of 2 chart analysts, including Bobby A. I went through in full his articulation of why he believed XRP looked bearish in the short term. I've just seen more analysts in recent days pile on and start agreeing, yeah, actually it looks like we're going to go down. He may have just been one of the first. And that's why when people were giving him crap about this, I'm like, he's been in our community for years. He's been one of the biggest XRP bulls. He's not saying it to put out fear into the universe just for the sake of it. He's not a troll. He's an XRP community member expressing his opinion, what he actually thinks is happening. So it doesn't mean for sure he's right. It doesn't mean we're going to go fall way, way, way lower, but he's certainly operating in good faith. I just find it fascinating that now a few days have passed and you see even more analysts piling on and be like, yeah, actually could go lower. Now it seems less crazy according to more analysts. Here's a post from chart analyst Ether Nasenal. And just to be clear, again, I want to reiterate, even though there are analysts who say perhaps the pain isn't over, doesn't mean that the best days are behind us, even for this market cycle. The idea that XRP is going to go higher and enter that double-digit price action, I haven't seen any analyst that I follow retract that except for one. I've seen one analyst express concern that we're actually entering a bear market. Outside of that, none of them. And so this chart analyst wrote, TikTok XRP. When a resistance level is tested more than 3 times and the price continues to accumulate above a major support, that resistance is destined to break sooner or later. Each test weakens the seller's defense. Supply gets absorbed, liquidity thins out, and the market builds pressure. Meanwhile, steady accumulation above strong support shows that buyers are quietly taking control. Energy is being stored for an explosive move. Eventually, the chart reaches a tipping point. What once held the price down becomes the launch pad. The breakout is no longer a question of if, but when. And he's been pretty damn clear that he still believes that XRP is absolutely hitting double-digit price action this market cycle. Chart Nerd still believes that. In fact, here's a post from him just this morning, 8:49 a.m. So what, close to 6 hours ago? Excuse me. XRP holders' FIB extension targets are as follows. Number 1, 1.272, which is $8. Number 2, 1.414, $13. And number 3, 1.618, which is $27. Tying up with recent developments and acquisitions, alongside vertical accumulation for 12 months, fundamental analysis and technical analysis point to all of them being possibilities. So he's been saying that for the longest damn time. His conviction has not changed. And I also appreciate this. He replied to himself and he wrote, none of this 10,000 per XRP rubbish, pure data. And that one gets a golf clap right there. Hell yeah. I despise the $10,000 XRP post. That is the stupidest shit. I just gotta be honest. I'm shooting straight. That is the dumbest thing you could possibly believe in the XRP community, roughly speaking. I'm sure somebody could surprise somebody's gonna be like, hold on, but that is completely absurd. Unless you're talking about runaway inflation, but when people say $10,000 XRP, no, they're talking about it based on the purchasing power of the dollar today. Let's all acknowledge that. So no, that's not happening. There is not nearly enough money on the planet to make that happen because the price would have to, there's not enough money on the planet to bid the price of XRP that high. So I'm just saying, here's somebody who's grounded. And frankly, XRP at $27, that's freaking exciting enough, especially if you're talking this market cycle, because you know where XRP bottomed this cycle, June of 2022? 28 cents. So you're talking about it going, if that happens, you're talking about XRP going from 28 cents to $27. So he thinks it's possible. I don't make price predictions myself. I admit I don't know, but I don't think any of that's crazy. $10,000, that's fucking crazy. Get the hell out of here with that nonsense. But the rest of it, it's perfectly reasonable to speculate that might happen. But regardless, again, the best is yet ahead. I don't know if we have to see further volatility to the downside, but I'll speak as somebody that's been holding XRP for almost 8 years now and never sold a single XRP. Look at the chart. Look at it like month by month. Go ahead and do that. Give yourself a little homework assignment. Look at every single up and down. I've been through every single one of those things. My conviction is held. I've refused to sell, and I've been rewarded so far. XRP did hit a new all-time. I held it as low as 10 cents, Mike. I held XRP at 10 cents. After holding it at the 2018 all-time high of $3.35, I held it, and it dropped all the way down to 10 cents in March 2020. And I was buying along the way. I was down substantially, and I just kept buying. And I talked about it as I was doing it. And then ultimately, was I rewarded? Yeah, we're in at $3.65. And my average buy price is 25 cents. And now XRP is $2.54. Crypto's just volatile. So I'm just showing you, I just use me as, it's an anecdotal find because I'm one data point, I'm one human. I'm a single data point. But I am telling you that I insist that those investors who have broad exposure to the asset class and then just hold for a long period of time, those are the only people realistically who are going to get life-changing wealth. If you don't hold for a long time and have that conviction and go through whatever it takes, even if it means multiple cycles, you're not going to get rich. But you do have the opportunity to become rich. You just have to choose to do the thing. The opportunity is there, and it's up to you to not bungle it. Yeah, it's up to you to not make the mistakes and screw it up. But yes, and I find that empowering. You and I'm just a regular dude. I'm not a finance guy myself. I am just a regular guy, a regular Joe Schmo here. And I know that's pretty much all of you listening. I just think it's an empowering message. Yes, you can do this. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say, all right? That would be a very, very, very bad idea.